There is a voice inside you that never lies, but you've been taught not to hear it. You know the feeling. That quiet tug in your chest when something doesn't align. The soft whisper that says, wait when your mind says go. The gentle resistance that rises when you're about to say yes to something your entire being wants to refuse. We call it intuition, gut feeling, inner knowing. But these words don't capture what it truly is. It's the heart speaking. Not the heart that pumps blood through your veins, but the heart that knows things your mind cannot explain. The heart that recognizes truth before your thoughts can justify it. The heart that feels the weight of a decision before logic can measure it. And most of us have learned to ignore it. We've been trained since childhood to trust the rational, the provable, the explainable. We've been told that feelings are unreliable, that emotions cloud judgment, that wisdom lives only in the mind. So we override that quiet voice. We silence it with analysis. We drown it with distractions. And in doing so, we lose our way. The heart speaks in a language older than words. It communicates through sensation, through knowing, through a kind of resonance that bypasses thought entirely. When you meet someone and feel an inexplicable warmth or an unexplained distance, that's the heart reading what the eyes cannot see. When you enter a room and sense whether it's safe or hostile, before anyone speaks, that's the heart perceiving energies that have no name. The Sufis understood this deeply. They spoke of Qalb, the spiritual heart, the seat of true knowing. They said the heart has eyes that see what is hidden, ears that hear what is unspoken. They practiced a kind of listening that went beyond the mind's constant chatter, sinking into the stillness where the heart's voice becomes clear. But this isn't mysticism divorced from reality. This is the most practical wisdom there is. Your heart knows when a relationship has run its course, even while your mind constructs elaborate reasons to stay. Your heart knows when a path is wrong for you, even when the path looks perfect on paper. Your heart knows what brings you alive and what slowly drains your light, even when society tells you otherwise. The heart speaks in whispers, not commands. It doesn't argue with your logic. It doesn't compete with your thoughts. It simply knows and waits for you to remember how to listen. Think about the last time you made a decision that felt right in your mind, but wrong in your body. Maybe you took a job that looked perfect, good salary, respected company, clear career path. But something in your chest felt heavy. Something whispered, this isn't it. And you ignored it because the reasons to accept were so convincing. How did that turn out? Or think about a time when you followed that quiet, knowing against all logical advice. When you left something stable for something uncertain, not because it made sense, but because your entire being said yes. When you trusted a person everyone warned you about, or walked away from a person everyone said was right for you. The heart doesn't speak in spreadsheets. It doesn't offer guarantees. It offers something more valuable: alignment with your deepest truth. Here's what listening to the heart actually means. It means pausing before you decide, not just thinking about a choice, but feeling into it. Place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes. Ask the question, should I do this? Should I stay? Should I go? And then be quiet. Don't rush to answer with your thoughts. Wait. Feel. Does your chest expand or contract? Does your breathing deepen or become shallow? Does a sense of lightness arise? Or does something heavy settle in? This isn't superstition. This is your nervous system, your emotional intelligence, your accumulated wisdom speaking through sensation. Your body remembers every experience you've ever had. It knows what nourishes you and what depletes you. It recognizes patterns your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. The heart speaks through your body. When something is right, your body opens. When something is wrong, your body closes. It's that simple and that profound. But here's the difficult part. The heart often speaks against what we want to hear. It tells us to leave when we want to stay. It tells us to stay when we're ready to run. It asks us to be patient when we crave action. It demands action when we prefer comfort. The heart doesn't serve your preferences. It serves your becoming. So before you make your next decision, before you commit to your next path, before you say yes or no to what stands before you pause, place your hand over your heart. Feel it beating beneath your palm. That rhythm has been with you since before you could think, since before you learned to doubt yourself. It knows you in ways your mind never will. And then ask yourself, in the quietest part of your being, what does my heart say? You already know the answer you've always known. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? Between the heart's knowing and your awareness of it, there is noise. And that noise has a name. The mind is a magnificent instrument. It analyzes, calculates, plans, predicts. It has built civilizations, solved impossible problems, created beauty from chaos. But the mind is also a defense mechanism, and it will do anything to protect you from uncertainty. This is where the noise begins. When your heart whispers leave, your mind immediately responds with, but what about security? What will people think? What if you're wrong? When your heart murmurs stay, your mind counters with, but you've already invested so much time elsewhere. This doesn't make logical sense. You're just being emotional. The mind doesn't trust the heart because the heart operates beyond logic, and anything beyond logic feels dangerous to the mind. So it creates stories, justifications, elaborate arguments. It drowns the heart's whisper in a flood of thoughts. And you mistake this flood for wisdom. But there's another kind of noise too, louder and more insidious than thought. It's the voice that sounds like you, but isn't you. The voice that echoes what others expect, what society demands, what your conditioning has taught you to believe about who you should be. This is the voice of the ego. The ego doesn't speak from truth. It speaks from fear of being wrong, fear of being rejected, fear of being ordinary, fear of being too much or not enough. It masquerades as confidence, but is actually terror wearing a mask. And it's incredibly skilled at imitating the heart's voice, learning to distinguish between the heart, the mind, and the ego is perhaps the most important skill you'll ever develop. Here's how they sound different. The heart speaks simply. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't build elaborate cases. It says yes or no or wait with a quiet certainty that needs no explanation. When the heart speaks, you feel it as truth in your body, not as thought in your head. There's a quality of peace to it, even when what it's saying is difficult. The mind speaks conditionally. It says, if this, then that. If you do this, you might achieve that. If you avoid this, you could prevent that. The mind is always calculating, always weighing, always projecting into future scenarios. It lives in possibility and probability. And because of this, there's always anxiety woven into its voice, because the future is never certain. The ego speaks urgently. It pushes. It insists. It says you must, you should, you have to. It compares you to others and finds you lacking or superior. Both are the ego's territory. The ego's voice carries a quality of desperation or inflation. It's either defending against something or grasping for something. And beneath all its noise is a profound insecurity, a sense that you are not enough as you are. Most people never learn this distinction. They think every voice in their head is equally valid, equally them. So they make decisions from ego while thinking it's wisdom. They mistake anxiety for intuition. They confuse the heart's clear no with fear, and the ego's desperate yes with courage. This confusion keeps people trapped in patterns that don't serve them. They stay in relationships that have ended because the ego fears being alone. They leave relationships that are growing because the ego needs constant excitement. They chase careers their heart has no interest in because the mind has calculated it's the smart choice. They abandon dreams their heart longs for because the ego is terrified of failure. The Zen masters had a practice for this. They called it beginner's mind. They would approach each moment, each decision, each question as if for the first time, without the accumulated noise of past experience, without the projections of future anxiety, without the ego's endless commentary. Just direct perception, just simple presence, just the heart's clear knowing. Alan Watts spoke of this as the difference between looking at life through a microscope and experiencing life directly. The microscope of thought can analyze, dissect, categorize, but it cannot feel the wholeness of what is real. Only the heart can do that. So how do you cut through the noise? First, recognize when the noise is loudest. It's loudest when you're about to make a change, when you're standing at a threshold, when something old is ending or something new is beginning. The mind panics at transitions. The ego thrashes during transformation, and together they create a cacophony designed to keep you exactly where you are. When you feel this chaos, don't try to think your way through it. You can't solve the mind's confusion with more mind. You can't negotiate with the ego. Instead, you must go underneath them both. Here's a practice. Write down a question you're struggling with, something you can't decide. Then write 3 answers. First answer, what does my mind say? Let the thoughts pour out. All the analysis, all the pros and cons, all the what-ifs. Write it all down. Second answer, what does my ego say? What am I afraid will happen if I choose one way or another? What am I trying to prove? What am I trying to protect? Be ruthlessly honest about the fear and insecurity underneath your hesitation. Third answer, what does my heart say? This one you don't write immediately. You sit, you breathe, you place your hand on your chest, and you ask the question with genuine openness. Then you wait. And whatever arises, not as thought, but as knowing that you write down, when you see all 3 answers in front of you, the truth becomes obvious. The noise will never fully disappear. The mind will always think. The ego will always protect. This is their nature, and there's nothing wrong with them for being what they are. But you are not the noise. You are the awareness that hears it. You are the stillness underneath the storm. You are the heart that knows, even when the knowing is buried beneath layers of thought and fear. And the moment you remember this, everything changes. The noise doesn't go away. You just stop mistaking it for truth. Your heart has been right about every major turning point in your life. You just didn't always listen in time. Look back at your life with honesty. Trace the path that brought you here. Notice the moments when everything shifted, the endings, the beginnings, the choices that altered everything. Now ask yourself, when did you feel it first? Not when you understood it intellectually. Not when you finally made the decision. But when did you feel that something needed to change? If you're honest, you'll find that the heart always knew first. Sometimes months before your mind caught up. Sometimes years before you found the courage to act. You felt the relationship dying long before the final conversation. You sensed the job wasn't right long before you started looking for something else. You knew you needed to move, to change, to grow long before circumstances forced your hand. The heart is always ahead of your conscious understanding because it isn't bound by the same limitations. Your mind needs evidence, reasons, a clear path forward. Your heart only needs truth, and truth doesn't wait for permission to be true. But here's what we do with this knowing. We doubt it. We interrogate it. We demand that it justify itself according to rules it doesn't follow. And in that doubt, we suffer. The heart's wisdom isn't about predicting the future. It's about recognizing resonance. Everything in existence vibrates at a certain frequency. This isn't metaphor, it's physics. Every person, every place, every situation carries a particular quality of energy. And your heart, when you let it, can feel whether that frequency matches your own. When something resonates with you, your heart recognizes it immediately. There's an opening, an expansion, a sense of yes that has nothing to do with logic. This person, this place, this possibility, it matches something essential in you. Not perfect, not without challenge, but aligned. When something doesn't resonate, your heart contracts. There's a subtle no, a closing, a resistance that your mind will immediately try to explain away. Because maybe this thing looks good. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe everyone else thinks it's right for you. But the heart knows what the mind cannot see. Resonance is everything. This is why you can meet someone who checks every box on your mental list and feel absolutely nothing. And you can meet someone who makes no logical sense and feel like you've come home. This is why you can visit a place you've never been and feel instantly at peace, or live somewhere that looks perfect on paper and feel increasingly hollow. Resonance can't be manufactured. It can't be forced. It either exists or it doesn't. And the heart's only job is to tell you the truth about what resonates and what doesn't. The Sufis understood this as hal, a state of divine presence that arises when you're in alignment with your true nature. They recognized that the heart doesn't just respond to what's good or bad, right or wrong. It responds to what is authentically yours versus what belongs to someone else's path. Your heart will sometimes guide you toward things that are difficult, uncomfortable, even painful, because those things are necessary for your growth. And it will sometimes guide you away from things that seem wonderful, because those things, however beautiful, aren't meant for you. This is the heart's wisdom. It knows the difference between what feels good and what is truly good for you. It knows the difference between temporary comfort and lasting alignment. It knows which struggles will break you and which will make you whole. Here's what it looks like to actually trust the heart's wisdom in your daily life. It means honoring the no, even when saying no disappoints people. Even when saying no seems to contradict what you thought you wanted. Even when saying no closes doors you worked hard to open. It means honoring the yes, even when it makes no sense. Even when it requires leaving safety behind. Even when no one else understands why you're choosing this path. It means accepting that you won't always know why the heart says what it says. The understanding often comes later, sometimes years later, when you can finally see how that inexplicable knowing was actually protecting you or guiding you towards something your conscious mind couldn't yet imagine. Trusting the heart doesn't mean abandoning discernment. It doesn't mean following every fleeting emotion. It doesn't mean making reckless decisions without considering consequences. It means this: when you've done your thinking, when you've weighed your options, when you've consulted your wisdom and your experience, and you still feel that clear knowing in your chest, that unshakable sense of truth that is when you trust the heart over everything else. Because the heart isn't impulsive. The heart is patient. The heart waits for you to finish your mental gymnastics, and then it quietly repeats what it's been saying all along. Start small. Practice with low-stakes decisions. Should I attend this gathering or stay home? Should I call this friend or give them space? Should I take this route or that one? Feel into each option. Notice what happens in your body, and train yourself to recognize your heart's clear yes and no. Then gradually increase the stakes. As you build trust in the heart's reliability, as you see how often it's been right, you'll find the courage to follow it in bigger decisions. Your heart has never once misguided you. Not once. Every time you followed it, even when it was terrifying, even when it made no sense, you eventually found yourself exactly where you needed to be. And every time you ignored it, every time you overrode that knowing with logic or fear or other people's opinions, you eventually circled back to the same lesson. The heart was right. So why are you still debating with it? Why are you still demanding that it prove itself according to standards it doesn't recognize? The heart doesn't argue. It doesn't justify. It doesn't compete with your thoughts. It simply waits for you to remember that you already know the answer. You've always known. There is a place inside you where everything becomes clear. You've been there before, even if only for moments. In the rush of modern life, we've become strangers to ourselves. We wake up already behind schedule. We move through days dictated by notifications, obligations, other people's agendas. We collapse into sleep, still processing the day's noise. And somewhere in this rhythm, we lose contact with the deepest part of ourselves. The part that knows. The part that feels truth without needing to explain it. The part that rests in certainty even amidst uncertainty. We spend so much time in our heads thinking, planning, worrying, analyzing that we forget there's another way to exist. A way of being that doesn't rely on constant mental activity. A way of knowing that doesn't require endless information. This is the way of the heart. And returning to it isn't about learning something new. It's about remembering something ancient. Something you knew as a child before the world taught you to doubt yourself. Something that gets buried under years of conditioning but never truly disappears. When the heart speaks, it's inviting you home. Home isn't a place, it's a state of alignment with your deepest truth. It's what you feel when you stop pretending, when you stop performing. When you finally exhale the breath you didn't know you were holding and let yourself be exactly as you are. This is why listening to the heart is so difficult. Because the heart demands authenticity. It refuses to participate in the games the ego plays. It won't tolerate half-truths or convenient compromises. It asks you to be real, even when real is messy, complicated, inconvenient. The heart asks you to honor what you actually want, not what you think you should want. It asks you to acknowledge what you actually feel, not what would be easier to feel. It asks you to become who you actually are, not who you've been pretending to be. This is terrifying, because becoming real means letting things die. The image you've carefully constructed, the relationships that depend on you staying small, the identity you've outgrown but still cling to because you don't know who you'd be without it. When the heart speaks, it often says, "This chapter is over. Let it end." And we resist because endings feel like failures. We want to hold on. We want to make it work. We want to prove that we didn't waste time, that our choices were right, that we're not the kind of person who quits or changes or admits they were wrong. But the heart doesn't care about any of that. The heart only cares about truth. And the truth is that you cannot grow without letting go. You cannot become who you're meant to be while desperately clinging to who you've been. So what does it actually mean to live from the heart? It means checking in with yourself before checking your phone. It means pausing throughout your day to ask, how do I actually feel right now? What do I actually need? What is true for me in this moment? It means noticing when you're about to say yes out of obligation, rather than genuine desire, and finding the courage to say no instead. It means recognizing when you're about to suppress a truth because it's uncomfortable and speaking it anyway, with kindness but without apology. It means creating space for silence. The heart cannot be heard over constant noise. It speaks in the gaps between activities, in the stillness before sleep, in the quiet moments you usually fill with distraction. Living from the heart is a practice, not a destination. Some days you'll be deeply connected to that inner knowing. Other days you'll be lost in the noise again. This is natural. This is human. The practice isn't about achieving some permanent state of enlightenment. It's about returning again and again to the simple question, what does my heart say? And here's what happens when you make this practice central to your life. You stop living according to scripts written by others. You stop chasing goals that mean nothing to you. You stop maintaining relationships that drain your light. You stop hiding parts of yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Instead, you start building a life that actually feels like yours. Not perfect, not without struggle or doubt, but yours, authentic, aligned, real. The people who truly belong in your life will recognize this shift and draw closer. The people who were only there for the performance will drift away. Both are exactly as they should be. The opportunities that serve your growth will appear. The paths that lead nowhere will close. Both are gifts. You've spent so much of your life asking others what you should do, consulting experts, seeking advice. looking outward for answers that can only be found within. And there's nothing wrong with gathering wisdom. But wisdom isn't a substitute for your own knowing. No one else can tell you what's true for you. No one else can feel what you feel. No one else can know what you know. The heart speaks in a language only you can fully understand. Its message is meant for you alone. And when you finally stop resisting it, when you finally let it guide you, something extraordinary happens. Not fireworks. Not sudden transformation. Not the dramatic awakening we've been sold in stories. Just this, a deep, quiet sense of finally being on the right path. A feeling of coming home to yourself. A recognition that you don't need to become someone else. You only need to remember who you've always been. So place your hand over your heart one more time. Feel it beating. That rhythm knows things your mind has forgotten. That rhythm is speaking to you now, as it has been all along. When the heart speaks, listen. Not tomorrow. Not when it's more convenient. Not when you feel ready. Now. Because the heart doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It only waits for you to finally hear what it's been saying all along. You already know the way. You've always known. Come home.